The late autumn afternoon settled over the city in a muted hush, golden leaves swirling along sidewalks slick from morning rain. Inside a high-ceilinged cafe tucked between designer boutiques and gallery spaces, Zane Wilder sat alone. He looked every inch the man magazines love to feature. Charcoal gray suit tailored to perfection. Silver watch, gleaming beneath a crisp cuff. Posture straight, composed. But beneath the polished surface, there was nothing but silence. The table in front of him held a barely touched cup of espresso and a single white tulip in a slender vase, deliberate floral detail, a design choice of the cafe. Zane's eyes lingered on it. He had chosen white tulips for his brother's memorial. Clean, simple, silent. It had been a year since the accident. A year of showing up, of keeping his business, Wilder Studio, afloat, of maintaining the curated image of the visionary interior architect who designed homes that whispered peace and breathed light. No one knew the cost behind his calm. Blind dates had been suggested, arranged, tolerated, for appearance, for business, or simply to appease people who did not understand that some men lived better alone with their ghosts. But tonight was different. Because it would be the last. This is the last one, he whispered under his breath, tapping the rim of his porcelain cup. After tonight, no more blind dates. No more pretending. I can feel something. His gaze drifted to the large glass pane beside him. In the reflection, the man staring back looked immaculate, but Zane knew the hollowness behind the eyes. A shell. An echo. The cafe buzzed gently around him. Brick walls, warm woods, subtle brass fixtures, and the faint hiss of steam from the bar. Jazz floated in. The air, comforting to some, irrelevant to Zane. Each table had a different flower. His had the tulip. Poetic, maybe. Painful, definitely. A breeze swept in as the door opened, bringing with it the light tapping of heels on the oak floor. Zane didn't turn, but she noticed him immediately. Mira Lane stepped through the doorway, pausing just a moment. Her pale blue dress was modest, slightly faded at the hem. Her blonde hair was tied back in a low ponytail, a few wisps brushing her cheeks. Her shoes were clean but worn. No makeup, no perfume, just the quiet scent of rain and something green. Her eyes searched the room, then landed on him. Even after all this time, she recognized him. She had not imagined ever standing in front of this man again. Not really, but she had dreamed of it, of being able to say the words she never got to say, of showing him the face of the little girl he had pulled from the wreckage. With a breath to steady herself, Mira walked toward his table. Zane looked up as she approached. He rose from his seat automatically, out of habit, not intention. She was unlike anyone he had met on these dates. Unpolished, yes, but real? "Mr. Wilder," she said, her voice calm but kind. She extended her hand with a small, unsure smile. Zane did not take it. He offered a stiff nod, turned, and reached for his coat. The signal was clear. He had already decided to leave. The silence stretched painfully. Mira froze, hand still in the air for a heartbeat longer. Then she withdrew it slowly. She did not blush. She did not shrink back. Instead, she said softly but clearly, "Wait, I think you once helped my daughter." Zane paused mid-motion. His back was to her. For a moment, he did not breathe. Then, he turned. Mira opened her bag and pulled out a worn photo, holding it delicately in both hands. She laid it on the table in front of him. A little girl, no more than 2, in a soot-stained pink dress. Her face tear-streaked, her hair matted from smoke. And holding her, emerging from a mangled car, was a man, his sleeves rolled up, soot smeared across his face, arms trembling but determined. "You were there," she said. "2 years ago, Redwood Highway. The accident. That was my daughter." Zane stared at the photo. His throat tightened. The air felt thinner, sharper. He knew the picture. He remembered the fire. He remembered the scream that cut through the trees, the unbearable heat, the tiny hands clawing at the window. He remembered not thinking, just running, just saving. His coat slid from his fingers onto the chair. He sat down slowly, unable to look away from the image. Mira placed the photo on the table between them, her expression gentle but unyielding. "You do not remember, do you?" "I try not to," he said hoarsely. She gave a faint smile. "Well, maybe fate decided you should." The sunlight shifted through the window, falling across the tulip, the photo, and the man whose quiet world had just cracked open. Zane reached out, his fingertips brushed the edge of the picture. For the first time in months, something flickered in his eyes. Surprise. Memory. Pain. Hope. The hum of the cafe continued around them, but inside the bubble of their corner table, the world had narrowed to two people, and a memory neither of them could fully escape. Mira's fingers lingered on the photograph. She gently slid it back into her bag, then looked up at Zane. Her voice, when it came, was steady, but touched with something softer, like pages turning in a long-forgotten journal. "I remember everything about that day," she began. "It was raining lightly, not much, just enough to make the road slick." Zane watched her, silent, unreadable. "I was driving back from my sister's house. Luna had just turned 2. She was asleep in the car seat behind me, clutching a toy bear she wouldn't let go of. Her hands folded on the table, delicate and controlled. A deer ran across the road. I swerved, just instinct. I hit the guardrail, and the car rolled. Next thing I knew, I was upside down, my head pounding, smoke filling the air." She paused, the memory thick in her throat. "I remember turning, seeing her trapped behind me. The seatbelt jammed. I tried. God, I tried. But the doors wouldn't budge." Zane's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. "Then I smelled fuel," Mira continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I panicked. I think I screamed, and then I blacked out." She looked directly at him now. "When I woke up in the hospital, they told me a man had pulled her out just before the car caught fire. They said he carried her up the embankment, handed her to the paramedics, then vanished." Zane lowered his gaze to the table. "They said he left a business card with the nurse. That was all." Mira reached into her purse again. This time, she retrieved a worn, creased card, edges curled, ink slightly faded, but still intact. She laid it gently on the table between them. "If she's okay," she read softly, "send a postcard." The corners of Zane's mouth twitched, almost imperceptibly. He remembered writing that. His hand had been shaking, his voice hoarse from smoke. He had shoved the card into the nurse's hand and walked away before anyone could stop him. Mira looked down at it. "I kept it," she said. "I never sent a postcard. I wasn't sure what to say, what would ever be enough." She glanced up again. "But I always told myself, someday, if I ever saw you again, I'd find the words." Zane picked up the card slowly, ran a thumb across the fading ink. His name, embossed in silver, the email long outdated. It looked like something from another lifetime. "I saw your face in a magazine," Mira said, her tone turning light. "A spread about minimalist architecture. You were standing in this impossibly white kitchen, arms crossed, looking like you had never run into a burning car in your life." A soft chuckle escaped her lips. "I couldn't believe it was you. But Luna recognized you too," she said. "That's the man who saved the girl." She saw the photo and just knew. Zane set the card down again, slowly. A pause followed. Then Mira leaned forward, her voice lower now. "I never got to say thank you." The words landed gently, like a feather on broken stone. Zane didn't respond at first. He sat very still, as if movement might break something fragile in the air. But when he finally looked at her, something had changed. His eyes, once sharp and defensive, were softer now, uncertain, vulnerable. He did not offer a speech. He did not wave away her gratitude. Instead, he simply nodded, a slow, quiet nod, the kind that says, "I hear you. I feel it too." Outside the window, the autumn light had shifted, casting warm gold across the tulip on their table. Between them lay a photo, a card, and the weight of a moment that had refused to be forgotten. Zane leaned back slightly in his chair. For the first time in months, the heaviness in his chest lifted. Just a little. Because maybe, just maybe, saving one life had also been the thread back to his own. The scent of kettle corn and cotton candy floated in the crisp autumn air as Zane walked through the gates of the small community fair. He felt out of place, his neutral-toned wool coat and polished shoes contrasting the vibrant chaos around him. Children laughing, balloons swaying, music drifting from a nearby carousel. He scanned the crowd and spotted Mira near a crafts booth under a yellow-striped canopy. She was kneeling next to a little girl, Luna. Zane's chest tightened. She was smaller than he remembered, though he had only seen her once, covered in soot, cradled in his arms. Now, She wore a pink dress with a tulle skirt that fluttered when she moved. Her hair was braided in pigtails, and she had a glitter unicorn sticker on one cheek. Mira looked up and waved him over with a warm smile. "Hi," she said simply. Zane nodded, still not used to how naturally she looked at him, like he was just a man, not a ghost from a tragedy. "Luna," Mira said gently, "this is Mr. Zane. Do you remember the story I told you, about the man who helped you?" Luna tilted her head, studying him. Her eyes, so wide and curious, did not hold fear or hesitation. She didn't speak. Instead, she reached into her small backpack and pulled out a folded piece of construction paper. She held it up to him proudly. Zane took it slowly and unfolded it. Crayon lines danced across the page, a childlike drawing of a man in a blue cape, standing in front of a car with flames sketched in orange and red. The man's arms were outstretched, and in them, a tiny figure in a pink dress. He stared at it. "She draws him all the time," Mira said softly beside him. "Always the same. A cape, a strong face, saving people." Zane looked from the paper to Luna, who now grinned and pointed at the figure. "That's you," she said. His voice caught. "It's really good," he managed to say. Luna beamed, then skipped off to chase bubbles floating through the air. He remained still, the drawing fluttering slightly in his hand. "You didn't have to come," Mira said gently, sensing his tension. "I know," he replied. "I almost didn't. But you did." Zane didn't respond. He watched Luna twirl near the balloon cart, her pink dress catching the sunlight. A long pause passed before he finally asked, "Why me? Why find me now?" Mira's expression softened. "Because my daughter deserves to know that the world still has men who run into fire." Zane blinked. Mira continued, her voice quiet but firm. "It's not just about gratitude, Zane. It's about what that moment meant. You didn't know us. You could have walked away. But you didn't." He swallowed hard. "You ran toward danger. And for Luna, for me, that changed everything." Zane looked down again at the drawing. Something fragile stirred inside him, an echo of the man he had been before the grief, before the silence. A memory of being needed, not for his designs or image, but simply for showing up. When Luna came back and tugged at his coat, asking if he wanted to see the petting zoo, Zane didn't hesitate. He held out his hand, and she took it without fear. As they walked toward the goats and rabbits, Mira followed a few steps behind, watching them with a quiet smile. For the first time in what felt like years, Zane didn't feel like a stranger to his own life. The next week, Mira invited Zane to visit the place she spent most of her days, a community library tucked between aging apartment buildings and a faded park. From the outside it looked unremarkable, but as soon as Zane stepped inside, he felt something shift. The walls were covered in finger paintings and paper stars. Bookshelves leaned slightly under the weight of dog-eared stories. A reading nook was made from second-hand armchairs and a patchwork rug, and laughter rang out from a nearby classroom. "This is where you work?" Zane asked, taking it all in. Mira smiled. "It is where I breathe." He followed her into a room marked STEM LAB, though the label felt ambitious. Inside, 5 or 6 kids hunched over a table, working with construction paper, glue, and old batteries. Mira crouched beside them, guiding one boy as he tried to make a paper robot stand upright. "Try folding the legs like this," she said, demonstrating. Her fingers were gentle but sure. Zane watched from the doorway, strangely still. Mira was in her element here. There was no trace of the cautious woman from their first meeting, only energy, purpose, and joy. One girl tugged at Mira's sleeve. "Miss Mira, look, mine has wings." "Perfect." Mira beamed, high-fiving the child. "Now he can fly to space and back." The room was cluttered, the lighting dim, and the tables scratched from years of use, but Zane had never seen a place so alive. After the class ended, and the kids filed out with sticky hands and proud smiles, Mira turned to him. "Thanks for coming," she said. "I know it's not exactly your world." Zane looked around again. It should be. That night, he stayed awake, sketching. Not for a client, not for a magazine feature, but for this room. 3 days later, Mira returned to the library after a morning meeting. She carried her usual tote bag and a thermos of cold coffee, expecting the usual chaos. But when she opened the STEM room door, she froze. The entire space had transformed. New lighting panels bathed the room in soft daylight. Custom-designed tables stood in curved rows, built for small arms and eager minds. The shelves were reorganized with clear labels. On one wall, a mural showed rockets, circuits, and a tree made of glowing gears. In the center of it all was a new sign, Imagination Lab. Mira stood motionless, footsteps behind her. "I hope that's okay," Zane said quietly. She turned to face him, eyes already glassy. "You did this?" He nodded. "I saw what you were doing here, what it could be. I just wanted to help it breathe." She looked around again, overwhelmed. "Zane, this is beautiful. This is beyond anything we could have hoped for." Zane smiled softly. "I design for people," he said. "This time I wanted to design for hope." The kids arrived moments later, running in with gasps and shrieks of delight. They ran their fingers along the walls, explored the new corners, claimed their favorite seats like they had always belonged there. Mira stood beside Zane, hand over her mouth, tears brimming. And Zane, for the first time in a long while, felt like he had built something that truly mattered. The field trip had started off as a perfect spring morning. The sun spilled gold across the hills of the local nature reserve, warming the soft grass underfoot. Children from the library's community program darted between wildflowers and trees, their laughter lifting with the breeze as they chased butterflies, flew handmade kites, and tossed paper airplanes shaped like birds. It was the kind of day Mira loved, full of color, innocence, and a rare sense of peace. She walked alongside Zane, clipboard in hand, occasionally checking attendance as she pointed out plants and trails. He listened intently, nodding as she spoke about how much the kids had grown in confidence since the STEM lab was renovated. The warmth of the sun, the softness in her voice, and the playful joy around them created a rare kind of quiet in Zane's chest, a moment where he didn't feel the weight of grief pressing down. And then Mira's voice changed. "Luna?" It cracked halfway through her daughter's name. Zane turned just in time to see the pink blur of Luna's dress fluttering too far ahead, her small figure chasing after a feather drifting in the breeze. The slope she stood on was steeper than it looked, and the grass, still damp from morning dew, gleamed like silk. In a heartbeat, Luna's foot slipped. She tumbled forward with a soft, startled cry. The world seemed to tilt. "Luna!" Mira shouted, panic tightening every syllable. But Zane was already running. He tore down the hill, gravity pulling at every stride. His shoes slipped on the slick grass, suit jacket whipping behind him like a cape. For a moment, time warped, everything slowed except the pounding of his feet, the rolling of Luna's tiny body, and the looming tree trunk just ahead. She was going to hit it. Zane launched himself forward, stretching every muscle, every ounce of instinct. He caught her just in time, his arms wrapping around her, his own body twisting so his back took the brunt of the landing. They crashed into the earth, a thud muffled by grass and breathlessness. Zane gasped as the wind was knocked from his lungs, but his arms never let go. Luna was sobbing now, clinging to him, trembling. Her little fists clutched the collar of his shirt like she had done it 1,000 times. "It's okay, little one," Zane murmured, voice low and steady despite the tremor in his limbs. "I've got you again." He held her like she was made of porcelain. His palm cradled the back of her head, his other arm wrapped around her spine, steady and unshakable. Dirt smudged his cheek, blades of grass clung to his clothes, but his focus never left her. Mira ran to them, her legs shaking with every step. She fell to her knees beside them, heart pounding, breath ragged. Her hands immediately reached for her daughter, but paused when she saw how tightly Luna clung to Zane. "Zane?" she breathed, her voice breaking. He looked up, and in his eyes was something that stilled her completely. Not fear, not shock, not even relief. It was love. Unspoken, raw, and fierce, the kind of love that did not wait for permission. Mira touched Luna's back gently, brushing the messy strands of blonde hair from her flushed cheeks. The girl hiccuped through her sobs, but buried her face deeper into Zane's chest. "She's okay," Mira whispered, voice shaking. "She's just scared." Zane nodded, his jaw tight. "I know." For a long moment, they stayed there. Zane, kneeling in the grass, Luna safe in his arms, Mira by their side, one hand on each of them. The other children had stopped playing. The chaperone stood silent, watching from a respectful distance. Finally, Luna stirred. She looked up at Zane with eyes still glossy from tears, her voice a tiny whisper. "You came again." Zane smiled softly, pressing a kiss to her hair. Always. Mira felt something shift inside her. The man who had once saved her daughter from fire had now caught her from falling. Not once had he hesitated. And now, something deeper connected them. Not just gratitude, not just admiration, recognition of a bond too strong to ignore, of a family forming one act of love at a time. That evening, Mira invited Zayn over. The house was quiet, small but warm, the kind of space that felt lived in, where every creak in the floorboard belonged to a memory. Soft jazz played from an old speaker tucked in the corner of the kitchen, its sound mellow, comforting. The lights were dim, casting a golden hue across the butcher block countertops, catching the edges of the mismatched mugs and chipped plates stacked neatly on the open shelves. Zayn sat at the kitchen island, both hands wrapped around a ceramic mug filled with herbal tea Mira had brewed herself. Across from him, she leaned on her elbows, chin resting lightly on one hand, eyes watching the steam curl upward between them. "I haven't had someone over in a while," she said softly. Zayn gave a faint smile. "Me neither." There was no awkwardness in the silence that followed, just space, shared and respectful. Then Mira took a slow breath. Her gaze dropped to the edge of the counter. "Luna's dad left the day I told him I was pregnant." Zayn's expression shifted, subtle but attentive. "He said he wasn't ready for that kind of life," she continued, her voice steady but low. "Disappeared within a week. No calls, no letters.